What we got here today is a nice original AC pump from a 1935 Packard 8, and it looks like it's sustained some damage in shipping, and I don't know if I'll be able to fix that or not, but I'll do my damnedest. But we're going to go through it, freshen it up, make it like new again, and you can follow along. First order of business is marking the orientation of the top vacuum side to the body. That way when you go to put it back together, it stays in the same orientation that it was when you took it off the car. In the event that life gets in the way and you're not able to put it back together right away, at least you'll have some reference marks to know how it goes. You won't be lost. You'll remove this top cover, this bolt through the center, and it's got a fiber washer underneath it that you'll get in a kit if you do this at home. This was this little retainer in the screen to filter the air. I never understood why they were doing that, and has since stopped doing it. There was just no sense in making the air cleaner. Remove 9 of these screws. Hold on the last one, and I'll show you why in a second. Holding on the last screw, underneath here is a pretty strong spring. You want to be careful because sometimes the diaphragm gets stuck. These two pieces get stuck together, and it gives you like a false sense of security, and then as soon as you take your hand off and take that screw out, it takes off. This is the spring that is pushing it, and it from here it probably goes down another 1/4 of an inch. The inlet and outlet valves for the vacuum side, remove that screw in the center along with the clamp, and the valves can be taken out. Underneath the valves is there's a paper washer. That's what was sticking that one. It was holding it in. Just make sure you remove, if there's any gasket stuck around in this area, make sure you remove it. This part is ready for the glass feeder. Diaphragm, turn it a 1/4 to turn, and it unlatches it from the link inside. And we got an oily mess here. This is the link. I'll show you that later on. Now we want to flip it over, and we're going to mark, just like the vacuum side, we're going to mark the location of the inlet and outlet. Take a picture of it, scribe it between these two pieces so that when it goes back together, it goes back in the same spot. We want to remove these two. I also removed these fittings. You never know what's hiding behind it. And a lot of times it's mud or any other kind of debris can get stuck behind it. Now if you're going to use any sealant, use the Teflon paste, not tape. This person used the paste, which is I'm glad to see that. Remove the nut, remove the dome, and I don't like seeing that Teflon paste on these threads. Isn't a good sign. Down inside you'll find a spring and a valve sitting down the bottom. We'll take them out after we get this off. Remove all 10 screws. The spring for the fuel side is underneath the diaphragm, so if it does happen to pop up, it only comes up a short distance. So just remove, you can take all these 10 screws out. And chances are this side is stuck too. Get a putty knife, put it in between the two pieces of casting. Usually a few taps will knock it loose. There's your valves. They just sit down inside there. Again, just like the other side, quarter turn, releases it. The size of the spring. And the spring seat. There's a seal down inside of here. It's a leather seal. You get a new one in the kit. This is ready for the bead blasting tank. Now we've got all the valves out. We just got to take apart these two pieces. This is the fuel side, the fuel diaphragm. One of these washers is bigger than the other. The small one goes down first. Keep your eyes on that. There's a copper washer there that has to go back in. And the vacuum one, same way. Big washer on top, smaller washer underneath. Washer, I call it a washer. It's a plate. And it's got oil all over it. Copper washer. All this stuff gets washed, so it's nice and clean. Usually there's a fiber washer right in here, and it'll take a razor blade to get it out of there. I'm sure I'll find out, but There's an awful lot of Teflon paste on this. It could mean that the threads are no good in the casting, in the fuel casting, or the threads on that dome are worn out. I tend to think it's the threads on the casting have gone bad. I mean, it's a few years old. I'm just happy to see it on the threads rather than the tape. Okay, gotta clean them all up. Make everything like brand new. I'll glass bead them, clear coat them, and then flatten out all the surfaces. And I'll show you what I get when I'm done. Well, while the clear coat is drying, we can put together the two diaphragms. This is the fuel side. Make sure that copper washer is there. Small plate and the big plate. And the washer and the nut. Now you want to set this up so that when it goes in there, these screws are going to line up. The way that this one was, one hole was right at the very top. Just go easy tightening it up. You don't want to break it. Put on the spring seat and the spring. Now I'm questioning whether this is really the spring that goes on there. Awful tall. Now the vacuum side, he wants to start off with the copper washer, then the big plate, the smallest of the two plates, the diaphragm, the big plate, the big washer, lock washer, and the nut. Now on the vacuum side, the center is between the two holes. You can just be careful tightening it up. The spring. The new leather seal is in there. You have to open it up a little bit. I use my little Dremel tool and just run around inside to open the hole up, just so that it put a little oil on it too, just so that it'll slide over it without pushing it out through the other side. If you don't open it up, it ends up being too tight, and when you put the thing in there, put the pull rod through it, it grabs a hold of it and lifts it up off the seat, off the pump. This spring. See, this is why I'm doubting that the spring is what belongs in there. This spring should be that. You're supposed to sit on that little edge right there, and it's just a little bit too big for it. I'll check in the books, see what's supposed to be there, and then we'll go for the rest. At some time in the past, one point, this casting was changed, because this really doesn't belong. This is not factory original on this particular pump. This should have had a casting with a cover on the back, a flat cover with 4 screws on it, and different type of valves. He just uses the late style valves. But it works. It serves a purpose. They're not the easiest things to find. We have them, but this was done a long time ago, when the earth was still cooling. Dinosaurs roamed around. Anyway, you get, you make sure you mention that if you happen to call up and get a kit. Let them know that it's got a different casting, or if it has a single cover with a bolt through the center, like this, then it's a later casting. You should have, like I said, the 4 holes. You cover the gasket, bolt through the center, along with, don't forget this fiber washer, and snug it down. Don't overkill it. This piece is ready. Let's put this in. We'll get the and eject on the spring. This is what belongs in it. This is what was in it. Produced way too much fuel pressure. It hugs that that retainer for the seal. It hugs it like it's supposed to. Put a little bit of oil on that seal. Turn the pump over so you can see what you're doing. And line up as best you can and turn it to lock it in. And then your screw holes will line up. This is going to we're going to put that in a collection of springs. The dome and the nut, they each get a washer, a fiber washer. It helps to seal it. There's also the springs and the valves. This is what the valves look like. They should have been on the vacuum side. And they have a spring similar to this, only it's half as long, and it's a copper color, probably brass springs. Okay, I made a part that was broken, the casting that was broken. I made a half-ass repair. It'll work. Anyway, okay, we want to make sure that these 2 seats down inside are nice and clean. And the easiest way to go about it is to get probably a 1/2-inch dowel, put a little sticky sandpaper on the end of it, and trim it so that it's that size, and then just go down and turn them. Another area to flatten out is this area here. Again, the easiest way to do it is to get a piece of sandpaper, and a sticky piece of sandpaper, and just make it your valves. drop it down inside, drop the spring down in, the dome, the spring sits right inside of that little pocket. Like that. Tighten it up. Don't use any sealer on that. I don't know why that was there. It might have leaked because the fiber washer was no good. So rather than replace it with a new fiber washer, well, maybe they just didn't have one. They loaded it up with Teflon paste to seal it. The nut. And tighten it up just to make sure that that valve is sitting right. You can just push it. We're gonna have to hope for the best on that repair that I made. So it should seal. And I gotta pick up a gasket for that. As you can see, the sealing goes along around here between the glass bowl and that the cork, gasket, and that seals against, well, the ledge that's in there. So nothing really goes that way. It should be alright, but I mean it's a fix that I really had no control over. I'm sure he doesn't want to replace the whole casting just because of that. Find your reference mark, and I didn't get the screws ready. Okay, we want to put two screws in, opposite each other. Go through the casting, through the diaphragm, and into the threads. And we want to run it about halfway down. Just enough to hold it. Don't tighten them all the way up. Put the rest of the screws in. Again, run them about halfway down. Oh, there's part of the casting that broke off. Okay, once you get all the screws caught and run halfway down, so they're not tight. This gets a little tricky. Normally there's an arm sticking out. This one has an arm that's up against it. It's a little tough to hold that in and preload this diaphragm like it's supposed to be. So I go underneath and catch one of the links. Hopefully it's the one for the fuel side. Pull it down till it stops, and then tighten up at least 4 of these screws. Hopefully they'll be opposite each other. And once you get 4 of the screws, then you can go around, tighten up all the rest of them. Now by catching that link inside and pulling that down, pulling the diaphragm down inside. You've essentially tightened it up while it's down there. You've preloaded the diaphragm, which keeps it from stretching, ripping through the holes, stretching the diaphragm around the two plates that are in there, and it ends up wearing it out prematurely. Doing it this way make it last a lot longer, and everybody's happy. Now the vacuum side's a little tougher. You get the two notches, and I don't know if I showed you or not, but there's the two links. Those two notches, turn it sideways, set it in and turn it, and you're locking it into this. So while it's up there, okay, locking that in, and we're going to put the spring on the top. Locate your index mark, or whatever you want to call it. Look at your picture and see how it went in, or how it was set up. Now when I say it's a little bit trickier, as you can see, I start pushing down on that, and that diaphragm starts to get pulled in. It's a little tougher to do this side because we got to set this diaphragm in a neutral position, and in order to do that I have to compress that arm, only because I can't get to the links anymore. And as it turns out, the diaphragm hasn't gotten sucked in on this side, and it looks good over here too. So I can get all these screws caught. And then wait till you see how I gotta compress that thing. What I gotta do is take my big water pump pliers and catch that arm, and you can see it flattening out the diaphragm. Now tighten down at least 4 of these screws. Opposite each other. And that should keep the diaphragm from getting pulled down the side. Once all these screws are all tightened down, you're almost there. Put the bail on, the bowl, snug it down, put the gasket on, and it's ready to go. If you want to get a kit for one of these, look for the number stamped on the outside of this flange. Nowhere else. None of these numbers up here or down here. Just look for the number stamped on the flange. And give that to whoever answers the phone, along with the application to the vehicle, and they should be able to supply you with the right kit. This particular one would be, if you ordered a kit by that number, you'd end up with the wrong kit, only because this top casting's been changed, and there's no way of knowing that until you get into it. So if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can call us at 781-335-8860, or on the web at then-now.com. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and leave a message. If you got any questions, leave a message down in the comment section. Be safe out there, and thanks for watching.